All right, all y'all. Hopefully you can see me. My name is Dr. Brett Brimhall. I imagine you guys know all that. But I'm grateful you're here. So I'm gonna kind of give you a little background on why I've decided to do this. I've been contemplating this idea of trying to take all the information I've learned over the last 50 years of my life. I feel like it's 50 years because my dad became a chiropractor in 1971, and I was born in 74. So my whole life has been around the healthcare space. And really, our model was trying to really teach people how to be healthy. I remember him telling me a story when he was young in practice where he was treating somebody and they just didn't understand what health was. And he realized I've got to do a better job at helping people understand what health is and how to actually help them get there and stay there. And that led him to teaching classes every month in his office for decades. I took over that responsibility when I began practice. What I realized is there's just this huge need for people to have really good information, but also where they can apply it and utilize it. And so this is why this has been born. I realize that most people anymore don't come to my office or my global influence now. So I wanted to be able to take all the information, put it in a systemized format where you could learn it and then you could pass it on to your families and your friends. And so you are the inaugural class of this process. And I've been teaching and training physicians since 1995. I love teaching, but really what this is about each of you. My goal is to at the end of this series, as we meet together for the next 8 weeks, is to really help you get a huge grasp on health, what it really can look like, dispel the myths of what you haven't been taught as to why you are where you are, and give you the tools and the strategies and the support to get your health back on track and to keep it there. Because one thing when it comes to eating food and health, it's not a one-time thing. It's a consistent process to get you down the journey to where you can heal the way you want to heal, and feel the way you want to feel. And it's absolutely possible. I've been working with people like a long time. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a process with you guys today. And this is the beginning process to set the stage so you can start understanding where you're at. And then you're going to get a quiz. And the quiz is for you as well as for me, for you to identify where you're currently sitting at when it comes to your overall health. And that way, you and I have a gauge as to where we end up in this next 8 weeks, but also something you can periodically take, hopefully a couple of times a year yourself, to assess your current state of health. And I truly hope you pass this on to your friends and family. So this week is a chance to really assess where you're at and also an understanding the background of where we're going. And so if you have other people that in your life, as we think about today, like, man, I really want them to be a part of this, they could watch this recording and jump into the next week. Okay. All right. So here we go. I'm going to share my screen with you so I can pass along some of these really cool slides that I've made for you guys. All right. Can you guys see that? Just thumbs up. Perfect. All right. Like I said, if you have a question along the way, I'm going to take a couple breaks here between, and then just you can raise your hand. But here's what I want each of us to understand: that health is a condition in which all functions of the body and mind are normally active. The World Health Organization defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely an absence of disease or infirmity. Now, most of the time when you go to a doctor, you're not going because you want to. Like, you're not even getting a health assessment. Yeah, you're going there because you have a symptom of some kind. And once that symptom is gone, supposedly you're well. And when you leave the hospital, many times, whether that was you've gone through a major ordeal, let's say cancer, or maybe it's a health crisis or a massive accident or injury, when you leave the hospital, it doesn't mean you're healthy. It just means you're not going to die on them today. So that's very different. So what I want you to do in your own mind is what do you want health to look like for you? What do you want that to feel like for you? And when it comes to health, I really want it to be physical. I want it to be mental and emotional. I want you to feel healthy in all those aspects because that truly is healthy. Because when you're healthy in those parameters, you can do the things you want to do with those that you love and care about. But if you can't, then that's a problem. And I want you to know where you are today is not a result of like it's not all your fault. What I'm going to say, it's not all your fault, but it is your responsibility. because a lot of people have been told wrong. And I'll give one example from years ago. They used to tell you that, you know, that butter was bad, right? And then they then came out and said, no, it's the margarine's good. And now they came back around years later and said, oh, guess what? Margarine's bad. So, and you look at back at the old commercial when it comes to cigarette smoking and even sugar drinks, they used to be touted as healthy, and now we know the problems with them. So just know, just because you're not where you want to be doesn't mean it's totally your fault. It just means it's our responsibility to take ownership of our health and to know the direction that we want to go. Okay. All right. So here's what when I talk about health, I talk about a very broad perspective. We call it the 6 steps of wellness, because it is a steps and a process to become fully healthy. Now, my dad and I have really been part of this process for the last, like him, since 1971, me since 1995 when I started teaching with him. We believe health is there's 6 major categories to it. Physical health, and as chiropractors, that's a structural component. That's a lot more than structure. It's how you move, it's how you bend, it's all that flexibility part. When people come in, they typically come in as a pain, and in pain, I said, like, once you're out of pain, that doesn't mean you're well. So we want you to have no pain, flexibility, and strength. Because our ability to take care of ourselves long term on our own, we have to have the strength to do so. And so that's the structural part. We're going to talk about electromagnetic pollution eventually. And you're going to know what you need to do to change your environment so you're not bombarded by this stuff so much, because it is absolutely robbing you of health. And this is it's not talked about a lot because you can't see it. But right now, you and I are using electromagnetic devices to have this conversation. Right. And so that computer, that cell phone, that Wi-Fi router that's in your house, those power lines that run underneath you or across you, they're affecting your health. So I want to give you some strategies, some tools to minimize the effect it has on in your house and your health. And that's going to be one whole week where we're going to go through that, so you can develop the process. There's some really good books out there about it, but I'm going to give you the simple tools to do. We're talking about a lot of nutritional interferences, and so that's going to be a big one. Allergies, sensitivities, emotional stress, and toxins. Each one of these are robbing you of your health. Now, if we break it down, there's much more complex to it. And we're going to have a couple weeks when it comes to the nutritional aspect, because there's so much there. And then what I want you to think about this perspective is, like, if you go through everything on this, like, this is why we booked 8 weeks. It's super overwhelming. Like, you think, man, oh my gosh, how do I even like start the process? And some of you may be further on your journey than others. But I promise you, as you start identifying where you're at and making a positive change each day, each week, each month, each year, you can end up in a very different place than if you had no direction. So the first direction is understanding where you currently are, and the next direction is, okay, what's the steps for me to start heading that direction? Okay. Now we're going to focus on the nutritional aspect first. When we really get into this, and this is the reason, but right, there's some things that are super easy to implement into life and some that are not. Like if your diet and your vitamin minerals situation is not good, those will make the biggest changes, because that's stuff that you can control. So we want to get that foundation started. If you've already seen me currently as a patient, we've already done that. But we're going to give you some way to make sure you're activating your cellular processes in a healthy way, and to supporting the systems that are not getting what they need. That's got to be a foundation, because if you don't do that, it's like trying to run a household without a paycheck. You have to have like money coming in order to, like, handle all your expenses. And if your body's not getting the nutrients it needs, if it's not getting the sleep that it's need, then it's not gonna. It's number one, it's not gonna do well, and then one, it can't repair. And we have to have both. All right. So here's kind of what you want to grade yourself here a little bit. Now I'm going to give you actually a questionnaire that's going to grade you a lot more so. And it's going to go through what we're going to talk about specifically, what's called a hypothalamus pituitary axis. So think of it your stress response. But I want you to kind of give yourself a grade here when you look at this. And I'd say A to an F. So hopefully there's no F's, but like structural integrity, think about how strong do you feel? How flexible do you feel? Like this is your assessment for you personally. How strong do I feel? How flexible do I feel? How much pain am I in? And just kind of give yourself a grade. Now, you're not grading yourself based on, let's say an elite athlete, like, and if you've never been one, you don't know what that level is. But like, think of what at your best, where would that look like, and where you are now, what grade would you give yourself? And when it comes to this next one, nutritional strength, balance, and reserve, that has to do with resiliency. Yeah, just where do you feel like you are in your food, your nutritional intake of food, your vitamin and mineral routine? Like, what's your resiliency when you're around people, whether you have to pull a long night or you have extra stress or you're around sick people? Like, do you feel like you bounce back super quick or do you feel like you're down for multiple days? So that has to do with resiliency. And if there's not a lot there, I would grade that lower. And again, if you've been super sick, gone through cancer or something like that, you know what F feels like. Like you know how bad that feels. So just give yourself an idea of where you're at currently. Because again, 8 weeks from now, hopefully we're moving our grade point average up. All right. Emotional balance. This has to do with how adaptive you are. They call it emotional integrity, but how adaptive you feel like you are to emotional stress, whether that's, and again, that's stuff that you can control, and also how much you let other things that you can't control affect you, like government, right? Or family stuff, right? Things that you don't have complete control over, but something that you let that rob you of your emotional happiness. Like, what is that emotional resiliency like? Give yourself a grade on that. Electromagnetic pollution. Maybe you don't know this one yet. All right, and this will be more, you'll kind of grade yourself as you go, but maybe based on how do you feel around cell phones, computers, TVs, power lines. You like when you're and even like negative people. Do you feel a lot of like just drain when you're around those things? If you are, you understand your body's not does not have a big resiliency. And the nice thing about this, once we give you the tools and systems, that will make a big difference. And some people, like, this is the main reason they come into my office, is they're super sensitive like magnetics. And so we have to teach them some really easy things to do to offset that, because you can't eliminate. So just know some of your stressors, if you can't eliminate, you have to change. If you can't change the situation, you have to change your body's ability to adapt. And with electromagnetic pollution, there's going to be a lot of that. All right, allergies and sensitivities. Kind of rate this here as how sensitive you feel like you are to foods, how sensitive you feel like you are to environmental pollutants, how sensitive to you are to like chemicals, mold, or like, I was walking through the mall the other day and my son, we were walking past Bath and Body and he started sneezing. Right. So he's very much aware of his body and how his body responds to things that are not real scents. And now, then for him, unfortunately, he's been eating sugar and stuff, which he's not supposed to do. So he's more sensitive now. So again, that comes back to the other part, because each one of these other parts, like nutritional balance, affects how well you deal with allergies and sensitivities. And for many of you, you may notice, hey, when I went through a major crisis, I started developing allergies and sensitivities. That's why you'll see one will bound to the other. And then detoxification status. They'll think about just, give yourself a grade based on this, like how toxic you feel like your environment is and how well you handle toxins. Like, let's just say, hey, man, I can't hardly clean my bathroom, right? And I'm sick, or man, if I'm around somebody that smokes, man, it's just, I'm done. Or I've been through chemo, radiation, multiple antibiotics lots of times. Well, then your toxicity status, or even look at the job environment. And maybe you work in an industry where there's just a ton of overall chemicals around. Again, your detoxification status is going to matter. Now, the quiz you're going to get after this one has a lot of other questions that you also will be able to access. All right. Again, and this recording will be up later today. You guys can have access to it. So just kind of grade yourself overall. And I encourage you to please share that with me individually, so I can just kind of look at it just as what I'll promise you, the more you put into this, the more you'll get out. Right. The more you put in, the more you get out. So as you kind of really embrace and decide, hey, this is my time. This is my time to get well. Then I want you to really put your focus in. Here's what I tell you. Like, they pay me $1,000 a day to teach. And when people in my office, I'm like $375 an hour to work with. And one of the biggest frustrations I ever have is I just want to give more, because I feel like if people just understood more of what health is and how it affects them, they make better decisions. So this is my way of trying to giving back. Like, look, you guys, please, like, take all this information I'm going to give you and apply it, and please share it with your families and friends, like the knowledge you gain. Because if you can help you, and you can help your child or your grandchild, they don't have to end up like a lot of times where you currently are. So super important. Okay. All right. So here's what I want you to think about. Where are you on your journey? Like, and unfortunately, some people are really young when they come in, and most people are only looking at symptoms. If you notice on this, what I call my life graph, most people show up at my office or doctor's office when they finally have symptoms. But what you know is you're already having dysfunction before you have symptoms. I'm not sleeping as good as I was. I'm getting sick more often. And now I'm hurting. Now I'm exhausted. Well, you've already gone past dysfunction into symptoms because the process of getting well is not a straight one line down, just like major disease processes don't typically just happen. They're most of the time developed. This is a question I ask my teenagers a lot. I ask them two questions. One, who's in charge of you? And they a lot of times say their mom. I say, well, whoever wipes your hiney is in charge of you. Now, that's because like we got to take ownership of where we are. Okay, that's number one. Because they got to be able to control what they put in their bodies. It's important we have control of that. All right. And so kind of look at where you're at on this. And the other one I think tell them all the time is, did you catch a cold or did you earn a cold? So many times if I ever get sick, which is not very often, or congested or something like that, it's typically because I've compromised on my sleep, or I was eating some stuff that I really shouldn't. I've just put myself in a compromised position. So do we catch it or earn it? Now, I'm not saying that that's always the case, but many times we put ourselves in a compromised position is why we end up where we are. All right. So we're going to get you back. Now, no matter where you are, I truly believe you can be better. I would say for 99% of people. There are occasions where it's just time, but most people can vastly improve where they're at no matter how old they are if we just make positive changes forward. So I want you to kind of assess where that is. So here's where you go. Now, this is a process no matter who you are, no matter how old you are, you're going to go through stress. Now, unless you're, I don't know, superhuman. So I want you to kind of in the chat there, like rate your level of stress right now, where you're at. 10 being like crazy, like highest ever has been. 0 is like, man, I'm so good. I got all the money in the world. I got all the time in the world. Nobody hates me. Everybody loves me. I'm the best ever. Right? Where would you currently rate your stress at? Right? What level would you say you currently are? And maybe keep a note of that because hopefully by the end of this, maybe you can't control some of those stressors, but you'll start realizing, hey, some of these I maybe could shift how I look at them, which we'll go through a lot in the emotional section. And that would change the load you're carrying. All right. So there's three stages of stress we all go through. And no matter what, it's all happens. You go through an alarm stage, a resistance stage, and an exhaustion stage. Let me tell you what that looks like. Now I'm gonna come back to that picture here. All right. So here's the phases of stress we all go through. And you can almost predict them. How many of you have gone through a stress and then a couple hours later you're back to, oh, okay, I'm fine. Or let's say you get cut off in traffic, all of a sudden your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, right? And now like, oh, I'm calm back down again. That's the normal stress response. Like going to see me probably is stressful for some people, right? You go through this normal stress response and then you go back to what's called the normal resting state. Now, unfortunately, most people live in this world we're in and they go through multiple stressors in a day. So think of this as your body's ability to handle stress. You go through a stress, you come back to normal. Think of that as your blood pressure, your heart rate, you're feeling calm. So I want you to ask yourself the question, how often do you feel relaxed and calm? How often do you feel peaceful? Because that's a state of healing. Most people go through this alarm reaction, they go up and they go back down. But unfortunately, most of us go after one stress, after another stress, after another stress. As that happens and your body kind of gets maxed out, we go through this resistance stage. Resistance stage is like, how long can I handle the amount of stress that I'm currently under? Now, unfortunately, this typically happens, if a tiger's chasing you, right? Tiger chases you, you kill the tiger, you're back to normal. Then you maybe your heart rate's high for a while. But now the stress is gone. You killed the tiger. But in the world we live in where we're in a constant state of like response and reaction, you're getting one stress after another stress after another stress. And some of the stressors aren't even ours. Like it doesn't take much. You can watch Instagram or you can hop on TV and you watch the news. And even though none of it's happening to you, your body responds as if it is. So people go through this resistance stage as long as they can until their bodies can't handle it anymore and they start going through what's called the exhaustion phase. Now, the exhaustion phase for some people and the major crisis is really short to where they go into complete exhaustion. For others, it's 5, 10, 15-year process where their body just their maximum output gets less and less and less. Now, just know physiologically, there's things going on. Like, how many of you have heard of this whole idea of like, hey, I don't want too much cortisol because it makes me have a bigger belly. I got a hormone problem, cortisol. So when your body goes through stress, it pumps out cortisol. Now, if you're in a constant state of stress, you're pumping out cortisol all the time and you should hold weight around the middle. But at the same time, when cortisol goes up, DHEA goes down. And DHEA is your young hormone. And without DHEA, you can't make testosterone. All right, I'll show you a little better slide in that here in a second. But understand you're somewhere in this process, and this whole process is led through these adrenal glands. These are your glands that sit on top of your kidneys, and they're the ones that help you handle all stress. But the world we live in right now, there's a constant bombardment of stress that happens to us all the time. Right. So here's where you got to ask yourself, where are your reserves at? And when we're talking about a gland here. This is purely, let's think about this as the gas tank for your stress. Now, there's not only a physical response, but there's a neurological response. So when I get stressed, if I see something, a guy cuts me off, right? I see that response and my adrenal gland responds. So the longer you're in a stress cycle, not only do your glands have an issue, your nervous system gets wound up. So if you think about your adrenal gland, think about your reserve, and think of this as a bank account. How much extra stress reserves do you have in your bank account? Like, how healthy is your bank account when it comes to your physiology? The only way to fill this gas tank up, just like your car, you have to fill it up. You have to have rest. You have to repair and rejuvenate. So that's sleep. And I'll talk about specific things you guys can start doing. Sleep, food, fun. So think about like a baby, right? What do you do for a child? You give them a schedule. You make sure they get their sleep. You make sure they get their playtime and they get their nap time. We make sure that happens. But as adults, how often are you getting good quality sleep? How often are you making sure you're fed correctly? And how often do you have fun? It's stressful thinking about that. So think about how often you get those, because that's what will actually rebuild your adrenal glands. And this stress can factor in both physical stress, nutritional stress, and psychological stress. So here's the phases you got to kind of decide. And the questionnaire you're going to do that I'm going to send to you, it's going to ask you questions where it's going to help you to see, am I in this driven state, this dragging state, losing it, hitting the wall, burnt out? So what that really ties into is, what are your reserves like? So think about when you've had great energy, right? And you just maybe new in a career, new in a relationship, and you just feel driven, like everything is just easy, it just flows. And then just things that guys just get where you just kind of dragging through it, then like you feel like you're gonna lose it, right? It's just, oh, I can't handle this any longer. Hitting 12, like, I just don't know if I can do this anymore. And burnout is like, you're just done. This is not only a physical biochemical response with the adrenal glands, because as this happens, your body, so in this first phase, your body can make a lot of cortisol. In this last phase, you can't make cortisol. This is why we see, and I'll show you in the next slide, why you see people develop they develop allergies the more stressed they are. They get sick more often because of this phase that you go through. The body doesn't have the reserves to handle the stress. So maybe just in the chat, like, where do you think you are? Like, do you feel like, am I driven? Am I dragging? Am I losing them? Am I hitting the wall? Am I burnt out? Like, where do you feel like you're at in that process? And then there's been different phases of my life. When I first started practice, I went through like a lot of school, and going through school, I was probably dragging a bit. When I got into practice, I felt like I was driven again for a while. Then I had a few kids, right? Practice life. And there were times where I felt like I was getting in this phase here. And I knew it, my labs were also that way. When I was pushing too many hours, mom passes away, right? Stress things happen, business stuff, financial stuff. I felt myself getting to this place. I had to work on rebuilding myself back to here. And it took some major life changes to do that, but I've gotten back here. So I've helped thousands of patients go through this process too. All right. Here's why this is so critical and why this is the foundation conversation we need to have before we do. Like, it's one thing to like, here, do this, 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 and this. Like, we don't want a list. I want you to understand that if we don't target and understand this stress cycle, and you find a way to start shifting that physically, like supporting your body and neurologically and making you a priority, it's a domino effect. So these are a couple of really good quotes that I like from a couple authors. Adrenal fatigue affects all the interconnected systems of the body, creates a biological domino effect that causes fatigue, cravings, weight gain, mood swings, and many health problems people are grappling with today. So can you see yourself in that paragraph? Like fatigue, cravings, weight gain, mood swings, and other health problems. I read that book probably 15 years ago. That is just as true now as it was then, maybe even more so. Here's another author. Again, this is probably closer to 20 years ago. Degenerative diseases are not genetic, but acquired because the systems of the human body are interconnected. And because one imbalance creates another imbalance, poor eating and lifestyle habits, not genetics, are the cause of degenerative diseases. The cause of degenerative diseases are our lifestyle habits. So medicine is not designed to help you. It's designed to manage your symptoms. Please know that. Symptoms are just a conversation your body is giving you to get you to pay attention. So I want you to pay attention to your symptoms, assess your symptoms. They're not designed to just they're not designed just to get rid of. They're to understand. So when you're tired or you're holding weight or you're grouchy, I know none of you'd be grouchy, or you're feeling off at certain times of the month, and this is guys too, there are imbalances going on that are tied back to the way organs, glands, and systems are functioning. And many of the habits that you're doing right now are not because you're not smart enough. You weren't taught the truth. And we used our body as a tool, not a teammate. It's time for us to assess and what you really need and start putting in checks in your systems to make sure that you're allowing yourself to get well. Because we would never treat our dog or our cat or our baby the way we treat ourselves. We know that about our babies. If you ever had babies, if they're off their schedule, if they don't get their sleep, if they don't get fed right, like it is a miserable experience for them and for you. Right. So I want you to just let's kind of, and you're here, so I know that you're wanting this is to make your priority. So here's the last quote I really like. People are accelerating the aging process by poor eating and lifestyle habits that raise insulin levels. What we do and how we live our lives determine our risk for developing insulin resistance and degenerative diseases of aging. The commonality between cancer, arthritis, diabetes, heart disease is all the same thing. It's all inflammation. And it all goes back to this. So this is not designed to be overwhelming. Just understand, like, this is why you struggled, because you haven't really been taught, okay, how do I reset? How do I reset the stress cycle and start implementing and putting habits into my life that allow my body to go back into the state of ease more often? Without a state of ease, you're not in a state of healing. People always say, I want to go on vacation. Why? Because I feel better on a vacation, right? Well, you got to help set up your world to where you're consistently putting your nervous system in a good spot every day. It doesn't have to take all day, but it's consistency, just like that baby. Because schedule, consistency, fun, food, friends. Okay. All right. All right, this is a little complicated, but I want you to understand something, okay? So how many of you have heard of, throw in the chat, about inflammation, or I feel like you're aging too fast, or you've heard of diabetes, right? Or syndrome X, or or you feel like you feel like you're gaining weight, but not, you're still hungry. You don't heal fast, or you have what they call allergy, leaky gut, and fatigue. So these are all things people deal with. They go to the doctor, and the doctors manage it. What I want you to know, this process that happens, it's all because of stress. Physical stress, chemical stress, emotional stress, it leads to these biochemical processes. So when you have high cortisol, you feel anxious, you feel irritable, and you'll gain weight around the middle. When you have low DHA, you'll have low drive, whether that's low libido or just low drive in general, and low testosterone. If you have poor ability to handle glucose utilization or sugar cravings, craving stuff you shouldn't. Your switch doesn't shut off. You just you keep eating, you shouldn't. You're craving things, especially when you're stressed, that aren't good for you. This is when this patterns off. An inadequate diet, more that you're craving stuff is not real food. A decrease in collagen synthesis and increased protein breakdown, you're looking old. Right? You're aging faster than you should. You're not repairing from things. After workouts, you're way more slow than you should be. You're tired all the time. That's because of this process. This right here, this what they call secretory IgAs, antigen penetration, circulating IgAs. This is that immune response. Like I just don't feel like I'm healing well. I'm getting sick way too often. Like I'm starting to have reactions to food and my environment. This is all that happens all the time. So the majority of this process is what people go to the doctor for all the time. But it all starts with this whole idea of chronic stress. All right. So here's the type of things people will feel, but it all goes back to stress because your body doesn't care if it's real or not. Like it doesn't care like if the tiger is real or not. It still causes the same, stress response. Okay. So think about you or somebody else that struggle with anxiety or sleep problems or depression or anger or ADD, attention deficit, hyperactivity or agitation. All right, headaches, colitis or IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, high blood pressure, muscle spasm, panic attacks, eczema, ulcers, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, infections, allergies, autoimmune disease, cancer. These are all directly tied to that physiological response to stress. Hopefully, you're seeing yourself somewhere in this phase. Like, okay, yeah, I felt that way in the past, and maybe hopefully you're moving forward where you're not feeling as much, but maybe like, okay, why am I not moving forward as fast as I want, or what else can I do to shift myself in a better direction? Because I truly believe it. Part of it is we just got to change the habits long enough, and then let your nervous system know it's going to be okay. Like in the chat, throw one in the chat if you feel like, man, I remember, I mean, like, this major event in my life. And then it just seems like from there, it's like things just kind of just got worse. And many times before a major health crisis, 3 to 5 years before that was a major emotional crisis. Whether that was losing a loved one, major event and stress, maybe a really traumatic event, that was the beginning of the neurological switch where your body got stuck on a stress response and everything started breaking down. So we got to train it the other direction. All right. Here are some of the things, and if you want to take a screenshot, go ahead. But these are the things that are common factors that will lead to you in a constant state of fatigue and adrenal burnout. And we talked about that HPA, hypothalamus pituitary axis, all this works together. It's not, adrenals aren't just one thing, it affects every part of you. So hypothalamus is in your brain, pituitary is in your brain, okay, and the adrenals are in your above your kidneys. So each one of those messes up the communication system of the body. So here's some of the things that'll do that. Skipping meals, right? And skipping, not intermittent fasting, but skipping meals. Like we're like, I'm not gonna eat, or I'm gonna eat. It's just where it's very sporadic. Eating processed junk or fake foods, not exercising or exercising too much, avoiding or neglecting relaxation, other ways to calm your central nervous system. Like throw in the chat like a 2 if like you are consistently practicing techniques that calm you. And that can be anywhere from mindfulness to yoga to meditation. And it doesn't have to be long, but like 15, 20 minutes, like 10 would be great, but 15, 20 would be better. Like concertedly doing that, like concertedly, like practicing these techniques. Right. And if you'll notice, not many of us do. And so it's really, really important that becomes a habit. All right. Not getting enough sleep. How many do that? Raise your hand. Not getting enough sleep or very chopped up sleep. Like it just is not, it's all over the place. Okay. And maybe it's not because you don't want to, or maybe you have really poor sleep hygiene, right? Lights on, TV on, have to have noise in the background. All right. Blowing past your own fatigue to finish the day's work. I mean, how many of you do that? Because it's like, I really should stop, but I'm going to keep going. Like my body said, whoa, and I'm said, no. All right. Putting yourself last. And I think this is probably a commonality for a lot of people. That's like, once I take care of this, then I'll take care of me. But we never get to me. So you're here now. All right. Here's the other thing: using sugar, caffeine, nicotine, drugs, or other stimulants to try to function at a higher rate when you're already tired. Breathing shallow when tense. So just kind of assess right now, like, are you breathing fast or shallow? All right. Exposing yourself to toxins through environment, household products, and food. So how many, and again, this is, and you do the question, a lot of this, but like, where are you getting real foods? Like if you live in where I live in Phoenix, I walk outside and there are toxins. Like there's tons of traffic around here. So it's not like I'm breathing clean air all the time. So you want to learn to control the variables you can and try not to worry about the others. That goes back to this worry part. Here's a little tidbit for you. Raise your hand if you worry. Okay. Sometimes worry about stuff you can't control. Here's the one habit I would give you today, just to start practicing. When you have worry on your mind, ask yourself, can I control this right now? Let's just pretend that you have a college kid that doesn't call you very often. I have one of those, too, sometimes, right? And so you get in your head, like, what's going on? Are they okay? And pretty soon you're in a windup. If I can't control the person or the thing right now, then I'm gonna give it over to God or whatever that higher power is to you, or just say, I'm gonna trust that God's got them. So I've given the worry over somewhere else. Or I know none of you would do this, especially not Sherda, right? Would ever listen to political stuff and get wound up. Like how many of you have done that, right? You listen to something political and pretty soon, man, you are on fire and you're razzed up for the rest of the day. You just put yourself into hyperdrive for adrenal burnout. So just ask yourself the question, when you're in a phase where it feels like you're worrying or concerned or feeling anxious, pause a second and say, is this something I can control? Can I control the outcome on this? Or what is the part that's my responsibility? And that will shift because then you can do something about it. Okay. All right. Mentally replaying stressful internal dialogues. I'm sure none of you would do that. Neglecting fun and relaxing activities that allow you to clear your mind. Like these are things that lead to adrenal burnout, that leads to all that other cascade. Remember our fun cascade back here? Like all the things that we don't want to do. This cascade, we don't want to be in that cascade. And doing these things will lead us to that cascade. All right. All right. So here's what I want you to do when you look at this list. I want you to mentally circle them. Like which ones have you gone through? These are the biggest stressors we can kind of face in life. And there's one that's not on here because it wasn't even a thing when I did this years ago. So death of a spouse, and that can be a relationship, right? It's gone bad. And I would put living through a pandemic as another one of those stressors, and having a friend that you've had for decades cancel on you, which was never a thing until COVID. Like, but there were major, death, like emotional deaths from people that we used to really be around. So death of a spouse, a divorce, a marital separation, a reconciliation, death of a close family member, personal injury or illness, just being married, loss of a job through a firing, jail term, or retirement. Like how many of those have you gone through or in the middle of going through? And that's the top 10. So if you've gone through most of those, your body gets stuck where it thinks that this stress response that you're living in is just normal. They call like PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, because you go through this stressful time and you're still stuck in that stress mode. Like you're on when you don't need to be on. Yet we've never been taught, how do I untrain that? Like how do I untrain that response? And it's, if you go to a doctor traditionally and you're dealing with anxiety or stress, do they teach you how to manage it, or they just say, here, take this, you don't feel it? So my goal with you guys is help you understand, like, you don't have to live in this state forever, but we have to do things differently. If we're going to have different results, we got to do things differently. And it's going to start by us getting things in a much better space. So let me just give you one last thing if you haven't. So if you think you're still with adrenal fatigue or this hypothalamic pituitary axis response struggling, these are some of the symptoms that show up. What you'll notice, it's like everything. That's because stress affects everything. So no matter who we are living on this planet, we want to find ways of managing stress differently so that we can be in a different one. I love that. 8 out of 10, Hunter, that's fun. And so there's so many of these things that we're dealing with day to day, and we're trying to manage the symptoms. And that's how medicine's set up. Hey, I have GI problems. Okay, I'm gonna go see a gastroenterologist. I'm having headaches. Okay, I'm gonna see a neurologist. But we didn't even look at, okay, what started this mess is, hey, this happened, this happened, this happened. I just don't feel like I've ever got back into that spot. I've never got back in that spot. All right. So we want to help you get there. So here's some things you can start doing right now. And what I would say is just choose one. Because I'm not just going to give you like, do them. Part of this process is if we improve 5% each week that we work together, we're going to improve over 50% total, 40, 50%. And if we stay in that course long term, it will absolutely change your health and the health of your family, even just a couple of percentage. So if you look at this one here, just choose one that you want to focus on this week. Just one. Okay. Whether that's eating consistently, consistent times, intermittent fasting, which we'll hit a lot more in one of the other classes. It's just be consistent. Don't be sporadic. Be consistent. So if you're intermittent fasting, eat at the same time every day. Be consistent. Okay. You may need to exercise less or more depending on where you're at. Calm your nervous system. If I could give you all one, is to let's develop better sleep hygiene. If we just do one this week, and what that would look like is let's change one simple thing, is that turn all your devices off an hour before you go to bed. And think, if I had a baby, what would my nighttime routine be for the baby, and start doing that with yourself. So I kind of want videos of that. I'd love to see you guys like, hey, you know what I did? I turned my phone off. I sang songs to myself, gave myself a bath. It's awesome. I want to hear the songs. But I remember our routine when I had little kids. It was very specific. We'd feed them. We'd then play with them a little bit. Then we'd read them some books. Then we typically bathe them. Then we take them tuck them into bed. And then we typically, it's probably painful, we'd sing them some songs and have a prayer with them, and have them go to sleep. So it was a routine that we went through to help them get into a different place of sleep. So if you can shift your routine there a little bit, say, okay, how do I put myself in a better state for sleep? And hopefully, hour before you're going to actually go to bed, start a routine. You're shutting down. Well, and that's phones, devices, emails, hopefully even TV. Like if you need some background noise of some kind, think about what's the background noise of nature. If you're on the ocean, it's ocean sounds. If it's firelight, like that's what a lot of people do, lots of fires at night. If you have firelight, or like, candles, non-scented, please. Okay, not fake candles. And then if you need some type of sounds, use some nature sounds that you like and play those in the background. Because those are normal sounds that are evolution wise, our systems have been used to get your systems back in that calm state. So you do that one thing this week, and you start moving that direction, it can make a drastic impact. Now, just know, like, if you're somebody that's like, hey, I've been sleeping crappy for decades, don't expect it to change overnight. And this isn't about being perfect. What this is about is start implementing systems into where you can have a routine that becomes your new normal, and where your new normal is calm, your new normal is rested, your new normal is energetic, right? and your new normal is like you becoming a priority. So here's my promise to you when it comes to this system. Um, your new life begins and ends with shifting how your body's nervous system handles stress, identifying where you're at, and finding ways to calm your nervous system down and start making simple changes. Your homework for this week is to start work on your sleep hygiene and then to fill out this questionnaire that we're going to get. That is a questionnaire that's going to go through a lot of different symptoms that you have, and just so you can have a baseline of number where you're at. And then I'm gonna have if you're on, there's a couple of you that's kind of auditing the program right now, but I want you to then send that to me, and then we're gonna have a conversation individually. So I want to be able to go through and make sure that you're on the right supplement routine for yourself. And many of you that work with me already are, and I want to know what you're doing. Because if to get the maximum results from what we want, I want to make sure that you're supporting your organ, glands, and tissues that are struggling the most, and that way you're moving forward. Okay. And then that's your homework assignment, the assessment. Number 2 is to send that to me. And then number 3 is you're going to start working on your sleep cycle. Are we good? Okay. So what I'm gonna have you guys do now, I want you to, I'm gonna stop this share just a second. And if you have any particular questions, I want you to just hit your space bar. That'll unmute you. And that way you can ask your questions about anything we talked about so far. No questions, huh? Perfect. No one has questions. That is amazing. Was that boring? All right. Let me ask this then. Um, After 8 weeks, like what would 1 or 2 things be that you'd really want to have changed? Like if I'm here in the next 8 weeks, I know that it's been worth it. What would that be? You can either type that in the thread or send that to me through Messenger later. But what would that equal? I know for me, as I think of each of you, some of the ones I know personally, is that you have energy back to where you feel like you're a priority, where your sleep cycle is more normalized, um, to where your immune system is stronger, where when you're around little kids, you don't get sick. Um, I like that less pain, less inflammation. So on the pain and inflammation, like think about, okay, what are some of the activities when you do them, you're struggling with? Okay. What are the activities you're doing you're struggling with, and what would they look like when they're not? Because most of us say I have pain and inflammation, but is there certain specific tasks you're doing that hurt? And then, but a lot of times you don't notice until you just don't notice. So it's really important to kind of look at what are those things that you're struggling with that we could do. Like I know it's Sabrina, you got a bunch. And so just say, what are my tasks? What are my day-to-days that I feel? And then, oh man, I don't feel, because I watch humans all the time. They're like, I'm not better. And I go through what they were like, a couple months ago, and they're like, oh, actually, that's a lot better. But if we're not catching the improvements in ourselves, we quit doing the very things that work. And most of us are where we are because of many of us, decades of doing things that just haven't given us results. So we're going to start moving the needle to where when we start eliminating stuff we have been doing that are hurting us and adding things in that help us and being consistent on that and activating key cellular processes, this can be a massive result. And because what I've learned, very few people lost their health overnight. It's super rare. I mean, it can happen, accident, injuries, something like that. Most of the time, we slowly decay over time because of processes, systems, stressors. Okay. Learning to manage stress. I like that. Walking and standing would be nice. Okay. All right. So did any of you think about somebody that you would want to do this with? You don't have to answer this out loud, but if there's somebody that would be an advocate. So what I've learned over the years, my favorite people to work with is like couples or individuals that support each other. The
Hmm.
opposite is also true when you got a couple of individuals that don't help each other. But if you have somebody that you would partner with on this that would help support you or advocate for you, whether they can join the group or you say, hey, this is what I'm doing. Can you just ask me how it's going? I want you to have some form of accountability person that will support you. And what that looks like is this. So if my wife wanted to, like, let's say she had a health goal, all right, of like, whether it's losing weight or having more energy or certain workout routine, well, the last thing I want to do is bring home ice cream. That's just a bad idea, right? So we all have those people in our lives that when you tell them you're going to do something for yourself, it's like they're trying to like, get you not to. So I want you to think about someone in your life that would be your advocate, but also someone that would help you hold the line. So when you feel like you're slipping and say, hey, remember you said you wanted this. You told me that you'd want me to help you kind of do what you said you want to do. Someone that would be help you be an accountability person. You'll do better. Like I'm gonna partially do that. That's one thing when people are working with me local, like I'm kind of the mean guy sometimes, right? But I want you to know that it can absolutely happen. But if you have a partnership with somebody, and whether that's somebody that's in this group or something like that, great. But like find somebody that you can be accountable to enough like, hey, here's the changes I'm making. Here's what I want to do right now. Here's the next phase. Because each of you are in a different place. Don't judge yourself based on where you are. Judge yourself based upon like the progress you're making. There's a process which is called being the gap or the gain. The gap is always wishing you were somebody else, somewhere else. The gain is what's improving that day. So I want you to stay in the gain part of that. Okay. Because you're not, this is not a decision. This is not a conversation about like, what, if I'm better, somebody else is like, okay, am I moving the direction that I want to go? Am I getting stronger? Am I sleeping better? Am I getting more energy? Because I don't want you to quit what's going to work. I can promise you, as you learn these things, you're going to realize, oh my gosh, why didn't somebody tell me that? Like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that this is such a big deal. So as you slowly remove some of these things out of your environment, out of your lifestyle, your body is no longer having to spend energy to do stuff that doesn't matter. And then we start implementing some of the systems in that actually are going to move you that needle in the right direction. You're going to feel yourself get stronger. But here's one caution I'm going to give you that I really want this to sink home. It's this. I've watched so many people start getting better, and then all they say, "Oh, I'm feeling really good," and they go do a whole bunch more, and they're like, "Man, I feel like crap." So when you do that, so when you start feeling better, and you just go and you do a whole bunch of stuff, and then you feel really bad, you're like, "Oh, he told me this might happen." What I want you to realize is that your health is a lot like a bank account and a lot like a paycheck. If you make more and you spend more, you're still at a zero. So as your body starts getting rid of some of the crap and you're nourishing it more, you're going to have this discrepancy where now your body's getting stronger. It's got more reserves. We don't increase the demands. All right. We continue with the habits and identifying the things that help us and move that up so we get a bigger and bigger reserve. Because there'll be a time in your life where something happens, life will happen. And when that happens, we want to have reserve to build upon. Most of us don't have a reserve built up anymore because we kept doing and kept doing it. We didn't take care of ourselves. So as you build that reserve up and you develop these habits, these set strategies, these patterns, that will begin your new normal. I'm gonna give you my permission to make you a priority. Like if you haven't yet given yourself permission, I want you to have permission that this is your time, this is your gift to do what you feel like you need to do for you. You have my permission to do that, right? I hope that someday you'll give that same permission to somebody else. You also have my permission to cut things out of your life that are not benefiting you. You have my permission to do that. Like things that you know that are not helpful to you. And again, unfortunately, this might be people, it might be food, it might be something else. You have my permission to like it's just time. Because you boil down health, it really has to do with removing stuff that's not helping you and adding things in that are helping and making you a priority. But I promise you, as we go on this journey together, you're gonna be stronger, you're gonna be more resilient, and you're gonna have the tools and strategies to understand the environment that you're under and how to win in this environment. So I'm looking forward to that. So if there's somebody else that you want to be a part of this group, just let them know. And they can watch this recording. They can join us next week. But you're the foundational class, so please, I appreciate feedback as you guys say, hey, I really like this. Can we add this in? Because there's gonna be a lot there, and I promise you, I'm gonna give you probably way more than you want. But that's okay. If you implement just one thing a week, that's what I want. Okay. Even if you implement two things the whole time we're together, but you have a foundation understanding, you stuck with those two things, you're gonna be vastly, vastly better. And that's what I want. This is not health is not an all or nothing. If I don't do all these 10 things, I don't feel better. No. It's as we remove a little bit at a time, we find and see more of who we really are. Okay, so homework, one, questionnaire, right? Okay, you have my permission. Okay. And then find somebody that you want to that will help you support you. Think of them as your cheerleader, not necessarily your accountability person, but your cheerleader. It's always good to have an accountability person, but cheerleader too. All right. You are amazing. You guys know your homework. You'll get that email or text later today on the questionnaire, and you'll have that. Except if there's somebody else you want to join, let them know, and we'll let them in before we get rolling. Next Monday, be the same time. Memorial Day week, that Memorial Day Monday, we'll just do it on the Tuesday. And just because that Memorial is at a Monday, and that way you guys can hang out with your families and friends, and you'll always get the recordings. Hopefully, the recordings will be out that same day. Okay. All right, you guys, you're phenomenal. Can't wait. Have a phenomenal day. Remember, new habits start today. Okay. All right. See you later, guys.